Man, you guys are going to hate me this week. For now, I'm just going to start you with this blog assignment, and in 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you about a paper. So on Blackboard, go to blogs on the left panel, and then you click on that. Everybody will be able to see this, but what I want you to do is explain to me what initially attracts you to another person. We don't have to have any personal information or preferences, but you can share things like things that you find physically attractive, or maybe physical attraction in general is what initially attracts you to somebody, or there could be other things such as characteristics of individuals, and you can share those if you want. I want you to also address when in a relationship, what keeps you attracted to that person that you might be with, and then respond to those two items, and then also comment on another person's blog if you agree or disagree with them and why. Have fun with it. I am now introducing you to paper 2. How excited are you? I'm giving you a little more than 2 weeks to work on this, and it's a little different. So 4 to 6 pages. Actually, a lot of you will find it hard to stay within that page range. You might need to go over a little bit. Try not to. But what you're actually going to do is watch a movie. You can watch a TV show, but you'll probably need to watch more than one episode to do that. Here's a few suggested areas that you can kind of look through, but there's all kinds of things that happen in shows, movies that have to do with family, with dating, with marriage, with living together, with watching parents get remarried or having new siblings, being raised by grandparents, all kinds of life experience, right? Those things are displayed in movies and series and TV shows, and sometimes they do a good job. Personally, I think especially Netflix does an awful job for the most part. In fact, if you look at one of the Netflix series right now, I think it's called A Marriage Story. It's not about marriage. The friggin' thing's about, right, something else. That's okay. Anyways, I think some shows sometimes are way too cheesy, and families aren't like that either, but whatever. So you're going to pick a show or a movie, and I actually have kind of the outline already done for you guys. So you'll follow these headings. You don't have to change them. Well, this you can actually delete and put the name of the show you watch or movie. There's kind of 2 different parts to it. This first part, the introduction, you're actually going to tell me in your own words, what's the point of a family relationship? What's the point of family? What does it mean to you, basically? Are they beneficial even, or necessary? Why or why not are they important to you? Try to make an argument. You can use the book to help you. Include reference if you use a journal or the book. PowerPoint would work too, and if you use a reference for that, there is an APA, but you can just say, see PowerPoint. I don't care. In another paragraph, I want to explain how this paper will support your claims using popular media as an example. So if you make an argument that family is important, or parenting, child relationships are important to help you become a good person later in life, well, you're going to have to make a connection between the introduction and maybe a TV show or movie example you used. It's not that hard, trust me. So this paragraph 2, students have told me in the past that they actually found it easier to do the first paragraph, then the review, which is this stuff, and then come back and write this number 2. Okay, so in this section of the paper, again, you can just erase this and write the name of the show you saw, right? Lots of good family relationships in Star Wars. I don't know. Okay. Get off. What is this doing? In this section, I want you to write a brief synopsis explaining the TV show or the movie that you analyze. Not just the name, but actually tell me what or why it was useful, important, and what it was about, but only a single paragraph. So you'll explain the show, and you might be able to explain some of the relationship dynamics. But in this body here, this is where the majority of your work will be, as well as discussion. But explain to me some of the relationships. You can use the names of the characters. Are they siblings? How are they related? You can say this is the mom, she's married to this person, or this cousin is just a cousin that lives with the family, whatever it might be. And then explain some of the dynamics. You might list some together, a bunch of names and who they are, and then you can, next to their name, just explain maybe their dynamic. So you could say this person hates this person, feuding siblings, or this person is stalking this other lady, but he's actually at the same time dating this other girl. We know it gets complicated. So can you identify the complicated dynamics of these different relationships? Are they interchangeable? How do they fit with each other? And some of the characteristics, right? Some people might be really trustworthy or naive or sweet or kind of a jerk. Okay. And then the analysis, this is where I want the focus of your paper to be. A 22-minute episode of a sitcom show, Modern Family is probably what I was thinking about, could potentially take hours to analyze and write up if you look at all the relationships within that single episode, how they interact, the nonverbal things that you might see, for instance, nonverbal language. Think about Modern Family, there you go, for an example, and there are several relationships to consider, and each pair of characters have different types of relationships with each other, with each family member, there we go. So with that, I'll need the actual season and episode number for a TV show. Again, I recommend that you do watch more than one, just to get more information about those characters. You can use the title of the movie. Okay, and for this section, I want you to start new paragraphs. Create your own subheadings under the analysis so that we can follow the dynamics you discuss with each character or the characters. So really what I'm telling you to do here is if you chose, I need to think of an example. I guess I don't need to do that, but I could say something like, here we go, character, Steven, and, well, I wouldn't have to say character, but you could say, I don't know, Gumball and Darwin, love, hate, something like that. So I know you're going to talk about two characters, and I know this paragraph is going to be about how they love each other and hate each other and fight and argue, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll write a full paragraph. Does that make sense? So in this analysis section, you'll follow the same pattern over and over and over for each paragraph. So you'll have about 4 to 8 paragraphs of character analysis, right? And it could even be just a single individual character, and you can explain in a full paragraph their behaviors, their actions, what they're like, that kind of thing. Okay, and then discussion section. Draw from the textbook from analysis section above to make connections. Length of the section might vary. So if you're already at 3.5 pages, you could technically still write for a couple pages. If you're at 5 pages from intro to analysis, you only have a full page to go, right? So it depends on you, but if you can squeeze all of this information into 2 pages, technically 2 pages will be your minimum. So I want to see a minimum of 4 pages, but again, I don't think this will be hard. So draw from the textbook and from the analysis section above to make connections. Give us some closure. Connect what you think is important about family or values to what you find in your analysis. Whether characters that you really identified with or were kind of the opposite of, for instance. Okay, if you have questions about this, you know where to find me. Okay guys, I'm going to talk about a few things today. Dating, mate selection, cohabitation, how do we choose mates, or what are you attracted to? That's what the assignment is, you just saw that. And a couple other cool things. So it might be worth noting that there are different kinds of marriages. Parent arranged ones, we'll get into that. But some cultures, some different countries kind of select relationships a little different than we do. It tends to be based on religious purposes, elders from a small village, depending on where you are, or your parents. Family status, family lineage, those things are considered when creating or forming new relationships. And those things tend to be more valued than love. This can also sometimes be a financial incentive or reason for this. It will extend, or the arranged marriages can serve to extend family units that go beyond just a new couple, but could also serve her family or his family, right, or their family. And they could also be told basically where they're going to live for first year or two. Different parts of India and several regions within Africa You actually find this fairly common. Even within the United States, you'll see different ethnic groups or small groups within urbanized areas. They might try to arrange these kinds of relationships, just given where they came from and cultural practices. So we don't tend to see it here as common or as often, but it can still happen. Why am I telling you about this? I want you to see that there are different and unique ways to form long-lasting, happy relationships. There used to be a sex therapist, but a marriage counselor, marriage therapist, and he had this opinion that he could basically not make, but he could get any two individuals that were in a romantic relationship. He could pair them up and set them for life. He was convinced by that because of a number of factors that are important in successful marriages, successful relationships. And he wrote a book on those things. But we're not going to talk about that right now. Right now I'm going to talk about that. Even arranged marriages can be very stable, can be very harmonious, can be successful without having all those precursors, right, that we are familiar with, such as dating, getting to know each other, and other things that you usually do, such as physical, sexual intimacy, spending time getting to know each other's family, right? Well, they forego all of that. And I even had an Indian student, a graduate student that was in my cohort when I was a student at Texas Tech, was part of an arranged marriage, flew back to India during the break, got married, came back to school. And I had a lot of peers that really resented her for that, and she's like, yeah, you're being oppressed, whatever. But 5 or 6 years later, they're still happily married. Seems like they're having a good time in Dallas. So it's just different from many of our own perspectives and our experiences, that we want to get to know somebody. That's part of the dating practice, and I love that whole dating experience that I had anyways. But you get to know a lot of things about yourself and others. Well, from this student's perspective, I asked her how things were going some time ago, and she said, well, a lot of people get married, well, their pot's already kind of cooled down, whereas ours heats up as we get to know each other, right? So they see marriage as part of they see dating as part of the marriage process in that case. It's kind of interesting. It's hard to just mention one specific country because there's just so many variations of dating practices or road to marriage, basically. But there are different forms of arranged marriages. Sometimes it's an official parental arrangement, an agreed upon contract, or otherwise it could be, we really love this person, we're so happy for you, or no, this guy's a jerk, right? It could be love-based. Again, that is usually a bit more common throughout the world. Cohabitation is kind of the newest thing. Well, since the 1980s, we've seen cohabitation become normalized in terms of it being the next step, right? Where we live together, and then either the birth of a child, it kind of marks that, okay, we're in a new stage, let's make this legal, or we've lived together for so many years, we might as well get that piece of paper signed. As many of you are already well aware or have experienced yourself, dating is an important aspect of life for us here in the U.S. And most societies. There are a lot of limitations. There's a lot of issues. If you want to read a book, Kiss Dating Goodbye, or I Kiss Dating Goodbye, is quoted fairly heavily in this chapter, but also in different parts of the book, of the textbook. It's kind of cool. But basically, dating is kind of the vehicle that will lead to intimacy. Not necessarily any kind of long-term commitment, and dating apps can kind of explain to you why that might be. Dating tends to skip the friendship aspect, although it's not always true, because sometimes you are friends with somebody, you get friend zoned, and luckily enough, you break out of it, right? So I think it's good to build a foundation of friendship first, but also friend zone is a very real thing. So we tend to see romantic encounters that are sustained over time usually starts with asking one person out, right? Or sending messages or talking about, hey, I'd like to date you, right? That often will happen early on, if it's ever going to happen. That's all that means. Dating kind of tends to focus on attraction and romantic attraction. Notice they don't say intimacy, but it could be physical attraction, but also other things. Hey, I'm really impressed that you can sing or play the guitar, or I've never seen someone else so passionate about helping others, right? Volunteering, whatever it is, however you meet people. They might be doing something that you found attractive, and so you might be interested in. And that those might be fleeting feelings, so sometimes that is attraction, or physical attraction. Dating tends to focus on enjoying love and romance because it's novel, because it's exciting, because it's fun. When we get married, sometimes we stop dating. And I always in class, you guys remember, you got to keep going. You got to keep dating. You got to keep focusing on new things or getting to know each other better, or asking for their opinion or thoughts or dreams or ambitions or goals. That's a way that you can continue to enjoy love and romance in new ways, right? And it'll keep things feeling novel or feeling alive. Dating often will mistake a physical relationship for love, where physical intimacy can be by itself a nice act or behavior, but it's not necessarily love, right? Especially because the other person might not feel that. So if you look at chapter 8, we talked about Sternberg's triangular theory of love. Do you guys remember passion, intimacy, right? We need everything to have a perfect relationship, right? Well, perfect as perfect can get. Dating often isolates a couple from other vital relationships, leaving important friendships in disrepair. Bro code, right? Well, let's not go into that. Get into that. But sometimes when you start a new romantic relationship, you might let other friendships kind of fade because you're investing your time and efforts into this one. And that's completely normal, by the way. We don't want to lose friendships, but I think as we grow, most people will understand, they're kind of doing their own thing. It's okay, we're Facebook friends, So it's okay to keep your life that you had before you start a relationship. I'm not saying you have to give them all up, but it is somewhat natural that you'll lose touch a little bit here and there, especially as you're putting all your time and effort in a new relationship. And it's understandable. Dating also will take a lot of time and energy, and that can distract, especially young adults, from their responsibilities, preparing for the future. And so people get as distracted as quitting school. My ex-sister-in-law tried to get my brother to quit school so that he could pay for her own endeavors. I won't say what those were, but I'm very, very happy that he made the decision that he did to move along, and he's already engaged to somebody else. Dating creates an artificial environment for evaluating another person's character. That artificial environment is the field, right? It's the restaurant. It's social encounters that they share together. It might be parties or at work perhaps, or their family, one home or another person. Those environments give you opportunity to assess, is this going to be something that is going to work? Okay. There's so much we can talk about dating. It's hard for me to move on, but I'm going to force myself to do it. A couple trends that we see today is this idea of hookup culture. I mean, this is 15 years in the making now, but there's different apps that are fairly common today that we use to basically have romantic encounters without having to put forward that initial time and effort. And there could be some risk tied to it. I'll show you some in a minute, but what I do find interesting with the dating culture that we have today is there's just a lot of vagueness, ambiguity. And I think that kind of gray area, we don't really know what kind of relationship this is going to be or become or what it is right now. I think that ambiguity or some vagueness, that can be exciting. That can actually be a positive thing. But if it becomes stressful or an anxiety inducing or even fearful, then we'll start to worry about what is happening, what is going to happen. So try not to stress ourselves out. But I would recommend seeking more than flings. And this is partly why. When I first saw this, I kind of laughed that everything's bigger in Texas. Even STD statistics, right? We've seen an explosion across the A&M system as well as the UT system in the last 5 years alone. Texas, these national numbers are a few years old, but did rank number one for a while in gonorrhea and syphilis and spreading of those things. And this is largely 18 to 29-year-olds. And when I got sick, I think it was a UTI if I remember right now, but in 2016, I went to a clinic in Flower Bluff just because it was the only one open at the time near me. And they were like so convinced it was an STD. And they said, dude, just save us time. Just tell us what's going on. How many partners have you had? When have you had them? And I'm just like, are you serious? I never went back to that place. But, they just seen such a high increase in such a short amount of time. It's probably because of the hookup apps, so there are some risks tied to that. We just got to be careful. But in some places, those cases of gonorrhea or syphilis, right, these sexual transmitted diseases, have increased by 600 to 700%. It's astounding. A couple of things that I think are worth mentioning. There's a study that assessed enrolled women in colleges across the country. Still found that marriage is a major life goal for the majority of women, and men as well. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 95 to 97% of us will eventually get married at some point. Women do still want to meet a spouse while at college, and many do. More women than men do, certainly. The relationships are often characterized by either not enough commitment, that they want more, or too heavily committed, and women aren't quite ready to settle down at that point. So men and women still tend to want different things even at the college age, even though we're still seeing a fairly common pattern of delaying marriage among both groups. Hookup culture is a little different for women than men. Distinctive sex without commitment interaction ranges from simply kissing to oral sex to actual full intercourse. So there is a range, but again, more men seem to be willing or engaged or engaging those risky behaviors than women. And again, I alluded to ambiguity. It kind of makes it kind of exciting or popular appeal, but there's still some stress that comes with that. There's a couple hookup dating websites, those kinds of things that I think are interesting. Last year I had an assignment for students to kind of actually go on these dating sites and just kind of look for things. What kind of things can you specify? I'm not going to do that this time. But there are all kinds of hookup apps, sites, random chats, those kinds of things. I don't know if I would recommend those. They're, again, we know that the risks are already, but the kind of individuals on those, I don't know. It feels judgmental to say something about that, but I actually do have an extra credit assignment for you here. So, if you click on Internet Dating on the URL right there, and it's in PowerPoint, so you have to go to the program or to the lecture in Blackboard. But it's a link to a psych episode that I like a lot. Season 7, Episode 2, Julia Takes a Lover. It's about dating, and it's fun, and it's a comedy, but I still like it a lot. If you just email me what you thought of the episode, maybe a few thoughts connected to class, give you some extra credit. So, choosing a mate. Your assignment, as you already know, is under Blogs tab, but you can review some of these for ideas. Maybe physical attractiveness is really important. Maybe even ages. I had a student that reported that she's kind of estranged with her mom, and I am as well. But sometimes we have parents that date somebody that's your own age, and how awkward and terrible is that? So age of dating later life can impact kids. Think of that. Birth order. Why is this important? Well, it's not uncommon that middle child will often date or marry another middle child, right? It's interesting how that works out, that kids or firstborns tend to also marry first or secondborns. There's an order to this. So again, evidence is shaky at best, but it does impact who you're attracted to for some reason. The question, do opposites attract? I used to have that in as an assignment for students to kind of consider, and a lot of students, even after lecture, would say, yeah, they do. Not really. It turns out that the more common uh, things of life that you share with somebody, the more successful your relationship's going to be. I think differences is fine and it adds some flavor to relationships. That's cool. Um, but if we have kind of different thoughts or opinions, political, religious, spiritual, child rearing practices, goals for our relationship, goals for marriage, goals for ourselves, education, all those things come into play. And if they're too different, it'll actually cause dissatisfaction. So we have to be careful. I think it's okay to have our own interests, our own goals, but we do need to have some more common ground than not. Um, and again, other things might be important for some of us. You might only want to date somebody that has the same philosophical, religious, spiritual views that you do, or goals in raising kids. Some of us might not want that. Some might do. And if we get into relationships and we get into these long-term relationships and we know our partner isn't interested in some things that we might be, uh, it's a ticking time bomb in that relationship. So what I'm saying, it's okay to be choosy, especially early on, and that's why dating is important. So while we're on the subject of dating, I might as well put a shameless plug in here. The Student Health and Wellness Office is going to put together a little Facebook Live meeting for all university students. The first one will be on the 23rd of April, a healthy relationships, and Dr. Yisikis and myself will talk about all kinds of things ranging from what healthy relationships look like, how to manage them. We'll look for warning signs, talk about the warning signs that you see in unhealthy relationships, and that stems into abuse, neglect, those kinds of things, but also how to handle conflict in a healthy way. That's where I come in. And then the week after that, we'll have another one on how to handle rejection. And I'll actually be talking about stalking and stalking behaviors and how to not do that or what to do about reporting. Okay, we're already kind of running long on time. So I just want to mention one theory. The chapter covers all kinds of possible reasons or explanations about why dating is important and how we select people we're attracted to. And a lot of it has to do with kind of internal feelings and thoughts. And so make sure you give yourself time to think about how you feel about somebody and to recognize those feelings, to process them, and decide what kinds of way, the costs, the benefits, if things could work out or if things would work out, should they. So the only theory I want to talk about is attachment theory. And this is the idea that applied in the romantic relationships as adults, that the emotional bonds that you experienced growing up as a child are going to become evident in romantic relationships as adults. So if you had a secure relationship with parents or caregiver growing up, you're more likely to successfully engage in romantic encounters and commitment as an adult. Whereas kids that either had difficulties attaching to parents, they're insecure, maybe they're anxious, avoidant, whatever it was that they experienced, they'll carry that into their adult relationships. And I've actually talked about this in class that sometimes the experiences you had growing up with your own siblings, maybe fighting, getting along, friendships, all those experiences in your family are actually preparing you to raise your own family. One of the processes that we see today that's fairly common is this idea of cohabitation. So that's when two adults in a romantic, committed relationship move in together. And any couple can do this. And in fact, there is some gray area with cohabitating. The only thing I want to mention is that what's most important is that if any of you decide to cohabitate and marriage is someday, coming down the line, make sure you're both on the same page about it. That's the difference that we see. In a lot of cohabitation couples, one person is just doing it because it's easy, saves on rent, whatever. They're not engaged in the same goal towards marriage, or they are looking for something better, casually, passively. And a lot of couples that do cohabitate, they're actually at a higher risk for separation, for divorce. On the face of it, I don't always know why. There are different reasons for this, but what I find is the best buffer well, is not doing it all, but make sure that you both want the same thing, and it's just a step.